Hello and welcome to Formula Food for the Russian Grand Prix. This weekend we are making pelmeni, or Pelmeni if you put in a completely cartoonish Russian accent stolen from a James Bond villain. But that's not the point. What we're doing is making these little meat dumplings. They're an incredibly popular dish across Russia, and the sort of ingredients and the construct of them varies depending on where you stand in Russia, and generally bases on which different sort of meats or meat mix you put in the middle, as well as what spices and seasoning you use. You can get what is ironically or very funnily called the Siberian version, which is just deep frozen ones, which you can then simply boil off in the same way that you would for super noodles or something akin to that. Yeah, not really much to them. They sort of originate from a very good way of trying to preserve meat for long periods of time through the winter, so you weren't trying to feed cattle through the harsh Russian winters. So before I start stumbling into very, very bad stereotypes, I suppose we ought to get on with cooking. And the first thing we're going to need to do is make the sort of dough, the sort of very simple actually dough that goes into the outside the casing of a pelmeni, which is easy to do if you have a pelmeni maker, which is a very sort of specific tray that you put them onto. We're simply going to bastardize and utilize a muffin tray. Oh, this is actually a cupcake tray, which has just about the right shape. We need to lay the pastry over, poke the holes in, put the meat in, another sheet of pastry, sort of crimp, chuck into a pot of boiling water. It'll make sense as we go along, and I will try and add instructions as we go along, and as usual there will be a recipe in the description below. So let's get cooking. Okay, we are on to making the filling for our pelmeni, and we've got the dough here ready, sitting just in the bowl we mixed it up in, ready to go for the next half of the process. We'll leave that there for a moment. We've got to make our filling, and I'm using beef. You can use beef, pork, turkey, a mixture of meats. It is designed to literally be a very clever way of preserving meat, so whatever meat you've got, raw, chop it up, chuck it in. I've gone for beef mince. I've gone for 20% fat, which is, I often use the higher percentage fat ones, as they're A bit cheaper, and B, when you render the fat through nicely, I've just said through wrong, when you render the fat through, there we are, it keeps it nice and soft and supple, and equally because it is fatter, it just makes that a little bit succulent as well. So nice and juicy beef, and one white or brown onion, depending on what you call them. And that's going to be finely cut up, mixed in with the beef and some spices. You can use pretty much whatever you want to go in with these. I've gone for a little bit of parsley and some smoked paprika. Absolute favourite spice. I love paprika so much. And I think just a nice sort of smoky spice would really elevate these to being a little bit more than basically just beef ravioli. So yeah, we'll probably time-lapse me cutting up the onion and mixing it all together. So editor me will now do that. Okay, so we've mixed together our sort of filling, meaty, mixed bright red bowl of beef, onions, and a bit of parsley and a bit of paprika, just to give a nice bit of spice, bit of flavour. Next thing we need to do is actually assemble our pelmeni casings, which means we need to take our muffin tray, which we're going to completely misuse to make pelmeni in, because we don't have a pelmeni maker. They're different because they have a slightly more raised edge that's slightly sharper, so you can literally push down and it sort of trims and seals the pelmeni at once. I'm going to have to sort of do that manually, using my fingers and a knife to sort of trim and cut. But we'll work with that. That's as good as we're going to get, because you can't just walk into Tesco's and buy a pelmeni maker. Anyway, floured surface, and we'll tip out and roll out our dough. So a bit more flour out. Make an absolute mess of the work surfaces, which as usual. Now, rolling pin. And we only want to use half of our dough to begin with, because we always want to keep about half of it to make the tops with. Whether we call this the bottoms or not, because it doesn't matter. So, we vaguely have a pastry sheet. We need to take one muffin tray, so you can see what we've done there. We have, I'll try and hold this a little close to the camera, I don't know how well it'll pick up, the indentations. We push the pastry down into each of the little holes, and what we need to do is fill the little holes with your sort of blob of pastry. Again, well floured up. Roll it out. Lay that over the top. A careful bit of stretching will go. And then simply sort of work your way around, crimping together all of the individual little parcels of pelmeni. And again, neatness we can work on, as ever with pretty much everything we've cooked on this show. Neatness we can work on, but eventually what you'll end up with is a variety of little dumplings starting to form, which will hopefully seal together. Trim them up, which will a big blunt knife to do. One pelmeni. So it looks like that, just basically a giant fat Russian ravioli. And that's what we end up with. And what we're now going to do is take a giant saucepan, fill it with boiling water, very heavily salt it, and pop them in and boil them. And you boil them until they start to float. That's how you know they're done. Then we'll simply serve them up and enjoy. Typically you'd serve them up with sour cream. I don't have any of that in. Don't much care for it either. You can put a knob of butter over it. And I do like butter, so chances are I'll do that. Right, kettle. Okay, so the pelmeni are boiling, they are floating, they are up at the surface, they're sort of bobbing around. We're going to find out if I rolled that pastry out thin enough. We need a slotted spoony sort of affair. This pasta scoop will do the job. We have a bowl on hand. And what we'll do is we'll just take the lid off. I'm going to leave the pot on the hob because I've still got pastry and mince left over, so we're going to keep making them. They do store well. You can freeze them, lay them out on a little sheet, freeze them well floured, freeze them till they're solid, then just sort of bundle them into a freezer bag. There's your top tip there. Let's try and get you without completely obliterating you. One. We'll get 4 out to start with and see how we go. Right. And here we have our pelmeni. Yes, so we have our pelmeni. Let's see how they taste. That's sort of big sort of dumplings. This one's conveniently tearing itself in half actually, so you can potentially, if I brighten that in post-production, see inside. There's a glorious amount of sort of beefy juice sitting in there, sort of spurting out a bit orangey red, courtesy of the, oh there we go, it's poked right through, courtesy of the paprika. There's going to be no elegant way of doing this. The beef mix is very nice. How does the dough actually taste? What's the dough like? I'm just going to have to... Not bad. I'd actually say that carries a better flavour than the pasta I made back for the Imola episode, right at the beginning of the season, episode 2. They are quite nice. It's basically ravioli. What I've just done is made ravioli with a Russian name, but proof's in the pudding. Tastes pretty good.